I think the biggest aha for me was the power of community, right? Bringing people together. I've always worked one-to-one. So when you start bringing people into groups, you have people who are all on the same journey together. We're all trying to write a book. So now all of a sudden you have peers where you can hold each other accountable. It becomes me and the client and this other person and this other person. So somebody's saying, hey, I have this chapter, would you look at it? Now there's a peer-to-peer thing. And I just want to formalize that. Loose community, where I want to bring in every month a new group of people who want to write their book. Let's get to the foundation, because that's likely where you went wrong if you're struggling. You haven't started. Here's where you need to start, this foundational piece, so you don't struggle.
So today on the Intentional Leadership Podcast, we have Clara Rose, a literary consultant, strategist, and an intentional influencer. She has RoseDale Publishing, but that's not what she's really doing. She's building a legacy. She's been an entrepreneur since she was 18. And what I love most is she's helping her kids and her grandkids become entrepreneurs. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
How are you this morning, Clara Rose?
Cold. It's cold today, right? Cold party boy. Crazy. Florida, mid-Florida, Tampa-ish, but today I've been like in the 30s overnight this week, which is like, we're cold kids down here right now. But other than that, fabulous. Thank you for us.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, who you serve.
Okay. Well, I own RoseDale Publishing. I'm the creator of the Savvy Author brand as well. And I mostly work with entrepreneurs and professionals who want to write a book, nonfiction book, to use as a tool for their business, ministry, cause, or brand. So it's very specific type of work in the literary world, not to say that I haven't done a few children's books and some legacy kind of work, biographies and some of those things, because those come, and if it's something that interests me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, right? But in general, the sweet spot for me is helping business owners, entrepreneurs create a tool that either is, lead generation or client transformation or legacy related. So that's
I love that.
What you.
And so do you do that? Well, we'll get into that first, but let's go back a little bit, actually. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. What did you do when you were 18, when you said you started your first business? What did that look like?
So I actually was out of school early. I graduated at 16, so I'm, the classic crazy overachiever person. But at 18, I decided to open my first business. And of course, my dad was an entrepreneur. He worked for himself. I didn't call it being an entrepreneur, right? I didn't know that language at that age, but he had always worked for himself. And so I understood clearly that was an option in life, right? And so for me, it was like, yeah, I'm going to work for myself. Why wouldn't I, right? So I became an Avon lady back in the day, right? Ding dong, Avon calling, right? It's a long time ago. And you went door to door with a little magazine and you took orders. And I learned in that process, face-to-face communications. I learned to get over the fear of walking up and, ringing the doorbell. And I learned to take orders. And I learned inventory and, fulfillment and managing the money. I learned so much in that first humble beginnings, right? It was running your own business. And they told you right up front, you work for yourself, which suited me fine. I'm like, great. That was my very first experience as an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what to call it yet. It's just the Avon lady.
That's great. Yeah, I haven't heard that one in a long time. I remember the Avon lady coming to my house. My mom may have been an Avon. I don't know. She did Tupperware. That's what she did. My mom did the Tupperware. But the Avon lady came over. My mom would buy makeup. My dad bought his cologne. I can't remember. There used to be a specific cologne that. Yeah. Oh, wow. And so you did that. And then was there a pivotal moment that got you into like the literary world? What started that?
Actually, when I was 11, I said, I'm going to be a writer, right? When I grew up, I'm going to be a writer. So I took notebook paper and string, right? Yarn. And I made a book, right? Crafted a book, and I wrote my very first book when I was 11. I'm sure it was terrible and, sadly, maybe good and bad. Maybe I'm glad it doesn't exist. I don't know where it went over the years. I was 11. But I was just sure I was going to grow up and be a writer, right? I was going to be an author, and that was that. Fast forward a little bit, when I was in high school, my mother had a friend who wrote children's books. She was on maternity leave and had this book, this children's book that was due. She's like, I just don't have the energy. I can't do this. And my mom's like, Clara, I can do it. So I wrote a children's book when I think it was 13, maybe 14 at that point. I wrote that for her.
So she had an idea and she was on maternity leave. And so it's her idea. You just carried it out.
Yeah, it was a series. So she actually said, here we are. Here's where we're at in the series. This is the title. This is kind of what I had in mind is going to happen. And I just did it. And I think part of it is just that I have this philosophy, maybe, I could do that. And whether I can or not, I still think I could do anything. Like, I could totally do that. Right. And so I jump in. I'm not afraid to jump in and learn something new or try something new. So if it catches my interest or I think, ooh, that's cool, right? I just do it. Right? I'm not encumbered by this, what if this happens or what if that happens or, ooh, I don't know if I could do that. And I don't know why. I think God just made me that way. So I just think, yeah, I could do that. And so that's the way I just approach life in general. So even though, I did some of these things, people are like, wow, I can't believe you did that. I never thought anything of it, right? And I just have continued, I guess, that through my life. So, after the Avon, then the next thing that came along was like, oh yeah, I could totally do that. And so I just dive in and do it. And it has just resulted in a lifelong entrepreneur journey. Just being able to, I've just done a ton of different businesses and anything that struck my fancy along the way.
So do you have a problem sticking with them and you get bored and you move on? What's that transition look like for you?
Usually it's something changes. Right? You have children or I went through a divorce and then I got remarried. And so there are times in life, transitional times in life, seasons for different things in your life. And I just shifted with the seasons, right? Even that was part of it. When my children were young and I wanted to stay home, I'm totally opening a daycare, right? So I did, right? And my kids were in school. I'm like, Mom, I'm opening an after school program. So I did. Right. And then as my children got older and I started doing different things, I'm super creative by nature. And so I've done things like, that's super cool. I'm going to learn to make wedding cakes. So for a number of years, I made just large, beautiful, wonderful wedding cakes. Just lots of different things along the way. Now, sounds like, I don't stick to things, but that's not true. It's usually either transitional time in life or it becomes something else. And that's, back to your question, that's how I got into the literary world. Even though I had the propensity already towards writing, in college, I was pre-med first. And then I started doing business development consulting probably in 98. So you're going to really get to know how old I am here pretty quick. Okay, so I was doing business development consulting, helping people start businesses and grow their businesses. Quite by accident, actually. I didn't intend to do that. People would just say, oh, you know what? Clara will know. Ask Clara, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, I can help you with that. So I've helped them with whatever in their business they were needing, which turned into, let's work on your messaging because, your messaging's a problem, which turned into, we're willing to get you out there in other ways, right? And we could do that with your messaging through the written word. We started looking for trade magazines and places you could get them, newsletters, right? Back when newsletters were a physical thing, right? Versus just an email thing. Let's get you in the right newsletters and get you some exposure for your business, right? which turned into you really just need a book, right? You need a book to tell the world, tell your clients this or your potential clients that. So before the world was saying, you should have a book, I was saying, let's create a book. And so we did. We made all the mistakes, right? As we went. Like, as you figured out, though, the literary and the publishing world, especially back then, we made all the mistakes. But eventually, we stopped making those mistakes and we started figuring out, we streamlined our processes. And then there came a day when it was like, I love this. I don't want to do that anymore. And so I did it.
So you're helping businesses try and define how they were just presented in the market, and you're writing articles, newsletters, and so you're kind of you're dabbling in the smaller version. And you know what? Let's create an entire book to draw in clients and to share your message. Is that kind of the transition?
So,
and how long?
A few years. I didn't open my first publishing company was 2010.
So 2010. Okay.
Yeah. It was when
2010, you were officially doing publishing.
Yeah. I opened a publisher. So I was still doing business development consulting at that point. Creative Alliance was my company. I was still doing the consulting, but I saw the need for there to be a publishing arm, right? Somebody to say, okay, let's publish this the right way. Right. And so not all of my clients who were consulting clients published. And then it started being people that I wasn't consulting wanted me to help them publish. And it just was a natural progression and it just became, I started saying things like, you know what, writing, speaking, and leading, that's how you're going to get influence. That's how you're going to grow your business, right? Writing, speaking, leading, right? And so I practiced what I preached and I went out and I led. Right, I went to the National Speakers Association Speakers Academy in 2013. I became the president of the Association for Talent Development. I think the following year, right, the year after that, started on the board of the West Pasco Business Association. I was the Christian Chamber of Commerce of Tampa Bay. I was their very first CEO. Those are all leadership things, leadership roles that gave me influence, which went with my write, speak, lead for influence, along with your book. Get on the right stages, have your book, be a leader. This is how you're going to impact the world. This is how you're going to make a difference in the world around you. So It was progressive. And now that's all I do, honestly, is I help people with their the messaging in their book.
So with that, was there, because I've been in that world with my wife, having 2 books out there. We've done it the traditional way, and we've done it the hybrid way. And so I'm very familiar with what that looks like. How did you, not coming from the publisher world and then evolving in, how did you wrap your arms around that? How did you find, say Ingram Micro or whoever it is that you use on the back end to create these books for you?
So back in the day, right in the beginning, there was no KDP. There was none of those tools, right? They didn't exist. It was traditional publishing, and then there was a very limited self-publishing. There was CreateSpace, which we used in the beginning, which ultimately, I don't know if they were like always owned by Amazon, which KDP is owned by Amazon, or if they acquired I don't know how it happened, but I was already like legacy member of CreateSpace when KDP came out. And so they just transferred me over like, oh, now you're KDP. Use this on-demand tool. And I dabbled in some of the other ones out there. I even did some publishing, like with a press. Right? We went to a local press to create books. But then there was this missing piece, right? We've created this book. Now we have a stack of 1,000 books sitting in the garage, right? Now we have to be the distribution channel. And so it was very clunky in the beginning, right? We're just trying to figure out how to navigate that space for my clients, right? Okay, we need a book. How do I make this happen? I'm like, I could totally do this, right? Because that's what I think. I could do that. So now they're just figuring it out. Right. And some things didn't work. Some things worked beautifully. And then in time, it just became a process. So
I love it. I mean, it's so often entrepreneurs are, we fall into it for whatever reason, and we're accidental, or we're born and say, this is what I'm going to do. And you kind of evolve slowly. It doesn't seem like there was this like, I got fired, I hated my boss, some big event, or even you didn't even say, oh, I got a divorce, so therefore I had to go earn a living, so therefore I started my own business. Right. It was this slow evolution. Was there, I guess one thing, was there like a mentor in your life that helped support all of this and encourage you through all of these?
So I think over the years, I'm a huge believer in ongoing learning, right? Lifelong learning. So I'd always been looking for who knows that, who does that I want to do, and then I go find them and see what they're doing and learn from them. And so every year I do something. Last year I did the Elite Mastermind with Brooke Thomas. I've done Platform University, Marie Forleo's B School, Amy Porterfield's, whatever her original was. She's on something new now. But I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on my education. And I continue. Now I'm in Andrews, right? A 7-figure CEO, because that's where you learn and stretch and grow. And we don't know everything, right? So you have to go find those people who know what you don't know and pick their brain, learn from them. So and mentor them. And then of course, I'm always giving back on the other side, right? And just people calling me, picking my brain. How do I do this, Clara? What do I do about that? Because that's the ebb and flow of entrepreneurship, right? We have to have those mentors, and we have to be a mentor to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mentor-mentee relationship is critical, and so you've evolved. So 2010. So now you're in year 15, 16, and how many books a year are you doing now?
We're still very small, so 10 to 12 is about the volume that I can sustain. I have a full-time assistant, I have a part-time junior editor, so does final edit for me. I have a proofer that are on staff, but that I use regularly. So we're a lean team, small, but I do have a desire to help more people, right? Everyone has a story, everyone has a voice, right? I had that desire. So I did last year create the Savvy Author Academy. And so we're rolling that out this year so that the parts that can be done as a group are being done as a group, right? And then the stuff that can be done as a group, then I can work one-on-one with those people or give them someone to assist them with that process. So.
Oh, that's great. I love that idea where you can, and if they join Savvy, I'll have you explain that a little bit, but if somebody joins Savvy, they can go, oh, this isn't for me, and either just not continue with the idea of a book, or I'm going to go hire you to do more of it. It's kind of almost a filter for them. How many people can you get into Savvy? How long is the Savvy course? What does that look like for you?
So 6 months is what I say that it is the average, right? 6 to 9 months it takes people to get it's like having a baby, right? It takes about 9 months to cook up a good one in general, right? But it can be done in 4 months, right? Okay. Like it also can take you 18 months. So the program itself kind of has a lifetime access, right, to the material, but it's not like a course where we just like, all right, here's a course, go make it happen for yourself. It's like weekly calls and a mentoring kind of process through the pieces that you need help with. Right? The beginning stages. We use the 3-phase philosophy, right? So we have the brainstorm blueprint, the create and correct phase, and then the publish and promote phase. And they're very different, and you need different support in those different phases. I mean, a lot more support right up front, right? You're getting that foundation right before you actually start writing your book. And then the create and correct, they need to do the work, right? You have to actually put your butt in the seat and get the writing done, right? And that's where I have no control, right? They're gonna or they're not gonna, right?
Yeah.
I'm there to say, what have you written this week? Babe, tell us about what you're doing and encourage them. But I can't make them do the work, of course.
Yeah.
And then people are going to publish at different speeds. And I also want it to be, if you want to finish this manuscript, have this amazing manuscript and go find someone to edit it, go find a traditional publisher or whatever, that's awesome, right? Do that. Go do that. But if you want, we also offer editing and formatting and publishing services at RoseDale Publishing if your topic is a good fit for Rosedale. Not all topics are going to be a good fit for Rosedale, and I'm okay with that. Most of my authors that come along are they get that. Like, there's things
Right, and it's perfect because if you're focused on mission purpose driven entrepreneurs and somebody wants to write a children's book, there is somebody that loves and is passionate of it and has a deeper experience in learning to be able to do that. And I think so often as humans, but also especially business owners that are in the similar or same world, we get too competitive and not as collaborative as we could be.
I agree.
And I'm as competitive as the next guy. I mean, I want to crush everyone, but I get that. But at the same time, I'm probably more collaborative than most because I just think we can just build each other up and all be successful. There's plenty of work out there. And if I'm not quite the right fit, I'm okay with that. So I think that's a wonderful thing, especially with, I mean, a book is a personal thing.
So
It is so deeply personal, and and to just be kind of okay, I think could really impact the success of it. And are you going from, so you're going from ideation, you're holding their feet to the fire, and then if they're a good fit, then you'll go to, say, you'll start the editing process and then figure out the production piece and then ultimately distribution. Is that the process for you?
Yep. We take it all the way. For the clients, one-on-one clients, it's ideation to, published, right? And you want to talk about promoting. You're going to be on our podcast, so we can promote it there. And they're going to get a whole list of, best practices for getting your press release done. And so I've got we don't do PR, but I'm giving you good best practices to get out there and do PR for your book. And then I'm always looking for collaborations. I have a lady who I just partnered a few months ago with her. She is doing group promotional book things. I'm like, yeah, let me send some authors your way for that because that's a piece that I don't offer, right? And so it makes sense for me to collaborate with those kinds of people or somebody in the fiction world. So when somebody comes along and says, oh, I have this fiction book, like I don't do fiction, but let me hook you up over here with this person that does specifically your kind of work. So it's author-centric is the word that I think I made that up, but that's what I call it, author-centric. So what is good for the author? That's what we want to do.
I love that. And if you hit 12 to 18 a year and that's your sweet spot, then you find that 19th or 20th come along and they're fiction. You can serve your people better and they can be served better elsewhere. It's not a downside. So I think it's wonderful that that's the plan. And so you've taken this creative piece. Had you written your own book?
Several. Yeah,
Okay.
the series, the Everything Matters series. One of my books is sitting, you probably can't see it back there. It's 8 Ways to Mind Your Own Business. The strategies and mindset for the new entrepreneur, which of course, it's been a number of years since I wrote that one, but it's so many people are always, even book clients, asking me, how do I do that? People still call. Clara will know, call Clara, right? Things like, where do I get an EIN? What do I do about, this or that? And I just know because I've just been doing it for so many years, like 43 years in business. So I just know these things. And so people will just call, hey, how do I do this? Where do I find that? So I wrote a book around that specifically. But most of my work, honestly, is around things that I think that matter, like influence and lead generation. And right, if we talk about the things that I'm passionate about, and in my mind, everything matters, right? Just to what degree does it matter to you?
Oh, for sure. We learned just yesterday that in our community there's actually a rabbit rescue. That matters not to me a whole lot,
Not to you,
but
to somebody.
And I just met the head of the board, and it's like, wow, okay. But I'm so grateful for her to love that, be passionate about it, and put the time in. It's just not mine. And I have my own thing. So I think that, helping businesses is really where I belong, and saving animals isn't. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And we can keep saying "and" instead of dividing it up. So if you've you've written a number of books yourself, and you've helped a bunch of authors, and do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite book that you've, on either side, one you've written and or one that you've helped?
I don't have favorites necessarily, but I am currently in the middle of 3 books that have really impacted me. One of them, Phil's, will be out in May, and his is around the economies of grace, right? So it's a faith-based book, but it's for churches, in fact, and men's groups and family groups. And it's around being financially responsible in light of the economies of grace, right? And so it's a little deeper. He writes at a like a master level, doctorate level. And so it's been more challenging to kind of like bring it down to where the normal reader is going to be able to consume it. Super neat guy, super cool project. I'm really loving the editing part of that. Patty is, it's a grief recovery book. Their story of losing, they plant churches. And it's her story of them losing their first daughter to her death or whatever. I don't know that it was necessarily named as that back then. And the grief process and the recovery process. And she writes so beautifully that I am just loving. It's like delicious. Just loving the editing process of her work. And she's so sweet and so spirit-filled, and I just love her. And then the other project is Dr. Kim, who is a retired dentist who lost her husband, and now she is doing a 52-week recovery journal for widows and wants to get it into churches and programs for widows. The statistics of the number of women who die alone because they were divorced or widowed is really high. And there's not much out there in the way of support and recovery for widows. Some of them who've never, even balanced the checkbook alone, kind of thing. So it's very spirit-based, leaning into the Holy Spirit in that healing and recovery process. So she's actually has several books, but this one's this beautiful journal, and I'm just loving the entire process. So I'd have to say, usually my favorites are the ones I'm working on at the time.
I was just going to say, it sure sounds like your favorite's the one you're working on. It's kind of, and that's fair. That's okay. It's fine. Yeah. And that last one you said, that's so needed right now. We experience that in our own home and our own family, and, grief care has been an incredible resource, but in in our community in the Pacific Northwest, there's really not that large of an it's not that large of a group, and they don't have a lot of leaders, and so it's definitely a needed topic for sure. So
a lot of resources.
Right. Yeah. And so is there something, I mean, you're staying in Savvy, we'll go back to, kind of balance back and forth, but in Savvy, you're staying one step ahead. Really, you're like 15 years ahead, but you just haven't, digested it to the granular level to do it as a group at this point. So it's pretty easy for you to stay ahead of the group. Is there something that you've gone, oh, wow, aha, or a big learning that you've done over the last year putting Savvy together that was so different from the other pieces?
Absolutely. I think the biggest aha for me was the power of community, right? Bringing people together. I've always worked one-to-one, right? So I'm either ghostwriting for someone or co-writing with them, right? And doing their editing, the formatting, the developmental piece with them. And so it's just been a one-to-one endeavor, right? So we start bringing people into groups, the community piece is super powerful, right? You have people who are all on the same journey together. We're all trying to write a book, right? So now all of a sudden you have peers where you can hold each other accountable, right? It becomes more than just me and the client. It becomes me and the client and this other person and this other person, right? So somebody's saying, hey, I have this chapter, would you look at it? And they're not asking me, right? Would you look at this chapter for me and give me your feedback? So now there's a peer-to-peer thing, right, going on. And I just want to formalize that. It's very loose right now, loose community, where I want to bring in every month a new group of people who want to write their book or have started and they're stuck or whatever. All right, let's get to the foundation, because that's likely where you went wrong if you're struggling, right? The foundational piece. You haven't started. Here's where you need to start this foundational piece so you don't struggle, right? So we start there. So every month, that's my intent, to have a new group that starts together. And then once we get past the foundational and it's time to get our heinies in the seats and work, then they can all roll into the larger group where they can support each other, encourage each other, hold each other's feet to the fire. So it's my vision, right? And then as we get closer to people from the group launching their book, now you have this group of people to cheer you on, right? Share your book with the world and their audiences. The dynamic surprised me, right? I didn't realize the community aspect was going to be such a strong piece to making the Savvy Author Academy really successful.
I love that. I think that that's a beautiful thing. And, that's part of how we met, actually, was that, and in a group talking about creating groups or one aspect of what we were doing anyway. And I think that accountability piece would be great, because I've got 5 books here that have been outlined and or half written. And I have I've got some that are even in note card form, so that in different colors. I bought cards so that I could technically paste them all up on the wall, and you could follow the journey of the hero. And I mean, I've gone a long way and haven't finished one. And my wife has finished 2, and she's about done with her 3rd, and the 4th one's actually done, but she wanted to do the 3rd one before the 4th one. So I get it.
There's that missing piece, right? So you're actually doing some of the things that I teach people, right? Get like a poster board on the wall or something, and the sticky notes or the, different colors so you can move it around, so you can visually see your storyboard happening. I mean, those are powerful tools that you're already doing right. So kudos for you, right? So that your missing piece.
Here. The audience can't see this necessarily. There's 3 of my books. There's 2 more I can't reach because they're written under something else. And here's all my note cards. So it's a problem I have. It's a problem. It's okay.
So this lady who came into my office 5 or 6 years ago, came in. She had already written 4 books. I think it was her 5th. Came in with this big bag. She's super dramatic anyway, but she turned it upside down and shook it out, and note cards and Post-it notes. And it was like this rain. This was big pile fell. She was, here's my book. And it hit the ground in this big pile. And we laughed. It's her personality, right? We just laughed at it and like, okay, that was your brainstorm, right? You've clearly done step 1, which is brainstorming. Get it out of your head where we can see it. Now we need to blueprint that into a book. And so we took all those pieces and separated them into piles. And, pretty soon we had a big old whiteboard with stuff stuck all over it where he could move stuff and right so that we could get a blueprint so that she had a road to run on, right? Because she's like, I can't get past this mess, right? Can't get my hands around this. That's when you need a process. Like, okay, would have been easier if she hadn't done them all on Post-it notes and poster cut, right? Would have been simpler. It would have done it the other way, but it was doable that way. And then we had an outline. I'm like, okay, now you know exactly what you should be writing for chapter 1 because we predetermined it, right? We know our topic, our subtopic, our anecdote or story you're going to tell that supports it. You know, if you're adding a scripture verse, we know what that scripture verse is and why, right? We outlined it well. Now just go do the work. So that's where this is actually just, it's not the newest version, so it still has that print stripe on it. Consistency matters. This is the tool I created for my authors to get the work done. Because
my wife just thinks that would be great for me just in general, I would imagine.
So this is really just the reason I did this was people were like, I just don't have time to write. Okay, I called it Consistency Matters because that's part of the Everything Matters series. The 90-day habit forming workbook for the savvy author. And so here's the premise. If Monday through Friday, that's just 5 days a week, you write 500 words. And that's like 3 paragraphs, my friend. I mean, that's such a small amount, right? Nobody ever does just the 500, right? But if you do that, in 90 days, you have over 30,000 words written, which is the size of the average book. Okay? So this right here, Consistency Matters, just says, okay, week 1, here's your notes.
Oh, I love it. There you go.
It's like, what did you write about today? Right? And then a habit tracker, and then a quote, because I love quotes. And then a place in your notes. And then what are you grateful for today? Because it can all need as it gratitude. So at the end of the week, it's going to do a little wrap up. And then next week, it starts again. And in 90 days, if you do it at the end of every day, in 90 days, you will have your book written, right? Yeah. We all have the same amount of time in a day. It's what you allocate your time to. If you don't have time to sit down and write 500 words, you do not want to write a book fast enough.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. No. And that's where what I do is I mean, the one that I just showed you has, I mean, I bet it's 50,000 words. I mean, it's just sitting there. I'm
Would be too big.
I'm done. It's like, I don't care. I'm done with this one. I want to go to the next one. And I just don't. So I'm writing it because it's kind of fun and exciting. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, I got to the point where it's just, I just don't care anymore. And I don't do it because anyway.
Yeah, it's about personal fulfillment for you. You're getting your fulfillment by writing it, right? Yeah. And so that's all you care about, right? You're like, okay, I did it, right? Yeah. But ask yourself this, is this the content in this? Could I impact the world? Could I change a life? Would I be different?
2 of them for sure I can, and that's why I really probably need to finish them. But so
you owe it to the world, right? Yeah. You owe it to the world to have it edited, have it formatted, and get it out to the world. You did the hard work already.
Yeah. So you've answered one of my questions, and that was, okay, we go from brainstorming to the blueprint method that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And that's, so people can come in there and they can do that as a cohort, or they can do that and have white glove you one-on-one. Sure. I think that's a brilliant. And then what's next, I guess, is in the process. If you go brainstorm, blueprint, and then it's probably got to be with, being in the book world and alliteration, it probably is another B.
It's not. It's brainstorm and blueprint, create and correct. They're both C's, right? So when you do the creative process, then we need to correct it, right? So I talk a lot about some self-editing that can be done before it needs an editor's eyes on it. You need to be able to go through it and say things like, did I use the word that in every sentence? Because you can't. right? Right. So there's some stuff that you can do to self-edit, and that's the correct part, right? Making sure that you have written your book, stuck to your outline, and then correcting anything that's wrong, which is part of the reason why we work through it a single chapter at a time. Because sometimes partway through the book, you realize there's a missing piece and then another chapter needs to be put in there, or this really belongs over there, right? This fits better as it fleshed out. This fits better, at the beginning of the book or the end of the book or wherever, right? So we create them in individual little nuggets so we can move them around. Then that's part of all the correcting thing that happens. And then we talk about publishing, promoting, right? We have to format it, which I talked about the best practices of formatting, or you can hire somebody. You can hire our firm to do your developmental edit, your final edit, and your formatting towards publishing. Now you have a manuscript. Once you have a manuscript in hand, the third phase, we talked about the 3 phases, brainstorm blueprint, create and correct, publish and promote. Like that's the piece everyone wants to get to, and it takes a lot of work to get there, right? Now we can talk publishing, right? Okay, you can self-publish, you can hybrid publish with a company like RoseDale, or you could try to find a traditional publishing house, which is going to require an agent. Here's what you need to do to try a brand agent. Not everyone will get an agent because it's in finding somebody who says, I believe in this project so much, I'm going to go sell it for you to a publishing house. Now, there are different approaches, right? Self-publishing, you have all of the control and all of the work. Traditional publishing, you have none of control, none of the work, and the least amount of money in your pocket, honestly. And then hybrid publishing, which is author-centric, which is what I do, get the best of both worlds. You need to do it for you, the benefits of being more of an independent, using self-publishing tool, and having 100% control of everything. So I offer all of those to people one-on-one. I'm offering all of those to people in the group till we get to the publishing. Then it's like, okay, yeah, if you're going to publish under the RoseDale, we have to edit and we have to format because my reputation is really important to me, and I don't put out anything that isn't intentional and has integrity, right? Mm-hmm. There's no foul language, there's no objection on material, those are just, don't fit me or my brand. So,
right. You have to be in alignment with your brand, with the authors.
Totally.
And I think that's a wonderful thing and a great way to say, look, that's differentiating you from others. They're not just taking on anything or anyone. And having gone through both the hybrid and the traditional publisher, I actually would not call them publishers anymore on the traditional side. I'd call them traditional printers.
Yeah.
And that is all they do for you. And it's entirely different. That we could create a podcast on the experiences that we had with the traditional publisher. And it's wild. Unless your last name is recognizable by the world, it, in my opinion, isn't even worthwhile doing. But there are exceptions. But
yeah, I think it's mostly if you are famous already, right? You have a famous name already. There is some benefit to going traditional because there's no cost involved for you. You give up control, right? They could change the title, change any of your content, change your cover. You have no control over that. Then they'll do all the work, right? And if you're a big name, they're going to promote you because it's in their best interest because they're going to make sales. But if you're not that person in that little category, you're giving up all of your control and most of the money for nothing because they're not going to promote you because it's not in their best interest. It's just reality, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the one person that we worked with, she's works with 12, just like you, every year. And one of those 12 will get and gain traction. So whatever one of those 12, she then goes to her boss and says, this is the one. And if that is what they get, that's the horse they're going to ride.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so they have hundreds of employees with a dozen books they're looking at every, one a month, just round number. And they each, they get one that they hope is going to be a popular one for the year.
Yeah. And then you add the author get to hope, right? That it has nothing to do with the quality of your book,
No.
right? How impactful your book or your story or your whatever, it has nothing to do with that at all.
Right.
And even worse, the small publishing companies out there that they just dropped your book. I just was working with an author. We've done several books together. One of her books was a tabletop book. And she's like, I think I want to go with a traditional publisher. Cool, right? We built it. She went off. She got a contract. Well, they didn't even carry it for a year. We're putting it out of print, right? But that contract says they alone have the right to publish that. We can't go publish that somewhere else now because she gave up those rights when she signed with the traditional publishing house, right? So we have to recreate this tool, right? And go a different direction with it so that we can publish it somewhere else. With all that effort, right? They made all the money in the sale when it first came out, and then it dwindled, and they're like, yeah, and then so they dropped it. So there's an ugly side to the publishing, the traditional publishing world.
Yeah, definitely an ugly side. So moving on in a positive light, what's Coffee with Clara Rose?
Oh, so that's older. So this is my 9th year as a podcast host. So over the years, I've had different iterations of my podcast. In the very beginning, I actually accidentally became a podcast host. I had no intention of being a podcast host. I was the Christian Chamber of Commerce CEO here in Tampa, and I was on a chamber show, right? And so I was just there as the CEO and sitting there in the audience with one of my members from the chamber, and the host didn't show up. She had an emergency, called the studio and said, oh my gosh, I can't see, she had a medical emergency. I can't see, I can't be there to host the show. And so my producer, John, said, Clara, you can do this. And I'm like, okay. So I hosted the show, right? Which turned into, just like everything else in my life, right? Just turned into something. He's like, that was great. You should have your own show. And I'm like, really? Why? Why? You're right. Why? Here you say. So I learned about it and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to. And so I started doing my own show. It started as Influence Matters because I talked about influence for years. Along the way, at one point, I just shifted to just the Savvy Author. And I just talked to authors and about authorship. I did that for a couple of years. And then I went, you know what? I think I want to just be more general, right? So we just did Coffee with Clara Rose. That was my next iteration. And then I could just interview anyone. Didn't have to be about a book. And I had so much fun interviewing other entrepreneurs. I'm like, oh, I like this, but I still want to talk about influence. So then I rebranded back to Influence Matters. And so kind of full circle. I was still talking about influence with Coffee with Clara Rose. But
I think influence is just your thing is how are you going to create influence, whether it's your podcast or creating books with or alongside the authors. That's really what you're about, right? And that's pardon.
That's my message, right? Yeah. That's my messaging, right? Yeah. We all influence people. Let's do it in an authentic way. That's having to
right. So, but yeah. So, can you give just we'll say a piece of advice for an inspiring author that's out there right now? Any habits or something.
Lots of.
How about 3 quick ones?
3 quick ones. Okay. First of all, if you're going to try and self-publish, hybrid publish, do not let the on-demand tool or the publisher give you a free ISBN. What that has meant is they've registered it to them and they alone own the rights to publish that version of your book. Buy your own directly from Bowker, which is where you buy them in the US, directly from Bowker, register it to yourself as the owner, so that you alone have the rights to publish your book. That's a huge mistake that I see over the years, and I see probably monthly people calling me, my publisher ran out of business, whatever. I'm like, okay, first question, do you own the ISBN? Oh yeah, they gave me one. Right. Okay, that means they owned it. Or it came with my publishing package. I'm like, okay, pull out your contract. Have a look. Do you own the rights to publish your book? You own the content, but do you own the rights to publish your book? Often, most often, no. You don't. Excuse me. Choking on air. I get excited and that's
Right.
like the biggest mistake right there. I actually have a video, 5 common mistakes when writing and publishing a book, that go find it on YouTube if you're interested. And that's modern. That's a super common mistake that people make. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put that and a couple other videos in a new, just a single opt-in where you can connect with me. And I'm going to use the URL, thesavvyauthors.com. So later today, that will be available, and you can get that video, which talks you through 7 reasons experts write a book and why you should too, 5 common mistakes when writing and publishing a book, and best practices for titles, subtitles, and even chapters, because that really does matter.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure that's our show. That'll be in our show notes, so everybody could go track those down. So, but that's important. Having your ISBN number is critical, and so that's number one. And everybody can go get the other 4 if they want.
Yes, there's more there. And do you want way more now, or
Sure. Well, yeah, if you want to, yeah. And then they have 3 more on your YouTube channel.
Okay. I don't even know if this one is on that list of the common mistakes, but this one most recently has been really brought to light more for me. Not having that foundational stuff done, right? People think, oh, I'm going to write a book. And they sit down and they start writing, right? 10 years later, or 5 years later, whatever, right? They still haven't finished their book. I'm like, I just don't know how to, bring this to an end. And it's because they didn't do that foundational work in the beginning. So even if you've written a bunch, sit down, do the brain dump, right? Do a brainstorm. What content needs to go in this book, right? What's the important stuff? And if it's not important, weed it out, right? And then blueprinting it out in such a way, like make your outline. Say, okay, this chapter is going to be about this. Now stick to that. Now you outline your book. Now go get the content you've already created and plug it in where it belongs. You are so much closer to having a completed manuscript at that point because it is intentional, right? It's strategic. Not having that foundation does a couple of things. One, you might never finish. It's going to keep you from telling the same story more than once in your book, which happens, right? Or quoting the same quote, putting in the same scripture verse, right? It's going to weed out some of those kinds of potential issues. And it just gives clarity for the potential reader, which is what we want, right? We want to create a tool that's useful for lead generation, client transformation, or legacy work, right? That's what we're trying to create here. So not doing that beginning work, probably because you just didn't know to do that work, is a huge mistake. Do the work first. The end result will be so much better.
I love it. That's great. So, well, thank you, Clara Rose. This has been fun. I'm glad that we were able to connect and just learn about your purpose, your mission, and the creative work you're doing for authors. And the key that, as business owners, business leaders, that if we have a purpose and a mission, the best way to do it and get it out there would be to write a book. It can help with our legacy. It can help get the mission, the purpose out there for others to hear and then support. And we can build influence through the work that you're doing. So thanks again for this today. It was awesome. And I will make sure we get those links from you so that we can put them in the show notes, and we'll put that as the easiest way to get a hold of you is the savvyauthors.com.
Yep, that's perfect. SavvyAuthors.com. All right. Thank you, my friend.